They say some stories should never be told, buried deep in silence and fear. Welcome to the realm of nightmares. Welcome to Story from Shadow.
I'm David, and this story happened to me 5 years ago when I was 17. At that time, I was studying at school every year, and I only dealt with people who were not good, and the reason for this was because I was living in the midst of a family full of problems, and I left my family and met poor people, and their style was difficult. And many times I did not hesitate at all to ride my motorcycle, and I struggled as fast as possible while I was drunk and always walking with suspicious people. You drink drugs with them, and you were very reckless. It could have been better all my life if I hadn't been exposed to the terrifying experience that happened to me after that. Because every night I would see my father beating my mother while he was drunk, and my mother would also defend herself with anything she could find in front of her, and he would stay in our house all night long. I was very upset, and I left them and went out. One night while I was at home, when my father bought me a prophet and condemned me to drink all night with him, I lost consciousness and did not feel myself until I woke up later and found myself on a dirty floor. Next to you is garbage full of syringes soaked in blood, and my temperature was so high that I was not able to get up from my place, and I do not remember how I got to this place. After a while, when I was able to get higher and get up from my place, I began to clean myself and walk away from this disgusting place. In the middle of the situation I was in, I was saying to myself, more than this could happen to me if I didn't escape the nightmare I was living in, until something happened that was the opposite of everything. What I was doing when my father and mother were fighting, and I left the house at that time because my mother was worried about me, and she started calling me and saying, "You are going to your friends who are also drinking drugs." I turned away from everything I knew, and I told her, "No, I don't have any friends at all, and you are the one who left me." I left her and continued on the way until I stood in my place and started smoking a cigarette alone because of the cigarettes I was with. But when he didn't get sick and I didn't have anything to do, I walked towards a well-known area of our city. This was an area where everyone who drank gathered. When I entered it, I began to smell a lot of fumes and smell toxic chemicals. I see many people sleeping on the ground and looking like a bird, including those who were thrown like a plane paper from a coma. Because this was a normal thing for me, I was not afraid. And it came to pass when I saw two men standing before me, smoking in a corner full of rubbish. I walked towards them. They offered ashraf to me without me saying anything. I took the cigarette from them and started drinking without thinking. And at that time, as soon as the smoke entered the rest, I felt that the first time I entered, or for many years, I had not smoked. And I was very comfortable and lonely, and my head was going to explode, and I could not see at all in front of me. And because I was close, I lost consciousness, and I felt that I was going to sit on the ground. I walked in front of the footmen when they saw my condition and my appearance while I was walking. They were laughing at me, and I kept sitting on the ground next to the corner. Garbage. And when I think of the best place to sleep all night, the adrenaline rises in my body. I heard someone's voice talking to me, and then when I looked up and said to him, "Who are you?" He responded to me and said to me, "Is it okay for us to be my friends if you want in time?" I told him, "No, I don't want to get tired again tonight. You can leave me alone." But when the man told me that I want you to go with me to my party, I told him, "Wait, do you have a party?" He said yes to me. I had the party at home and there were many people there at that time. I agreed that I would go with him, and I thought that the place would be better than sitting and dying in the middle of this dangerous street. I quickly got up from my place and walked with the man, who was clearly in his appearance that he was in the late 50s, and his face was full of scratches and wounds, and his wide eyes were open to the other, and he was looking at me with them, and he was walking very quickly without his leg making any sound, and I was walking behind him until he was close to us in a strange place, and the man stood up and began to look around. Terrifying, and he said to me, "Almighty God behind me," and we began to walk in a narrow corridor for 3 minutes until we arrived in front of a metal door. He knocked on the door 3 times and looked with his eyes through a small hole in the door in the shape of a square. The man who was on the other side gave his name, and he responded to him and said to him. I looked at him, and then the door opened, and we also saw a narrow corridor in front of us. And at the end of the corridor, a large door, and behind the door, lighting in many colors. So loud that it echoes throughout the place. The man who opened the door for us was very tall and bald. I thought it might be the drug dealer because he handed Andrew a small bag of white pills and watch him take it. After that, he took me and we walked towards the room at the end of the corridor. As soon as we entered the room, I saw 7 men sitting in front of computers and playing video games. A large sign lit up caution and wrote on it. When I focused on the computer screens, I knew that they were all playing Minecraft D, but each of them is at a different stage and the way they were playing. It was very terrifying for me, full of goodies. It was clear from their appearance that they were playing with their groceries for a long time without any rest. After a while, they looked at me and smiled. Their smile was very terrifying and he said to me, "Welcome to my place, and now I can explain to you what my party is about." When he told me that they were all for a joke, I was surprised and asked him how for a joke. He replied and said to me, "Just sit down while I explain to you and talk to me on a chair." He closed the door on which I sat, and because at that time I knew the game that he was going to talk about because one of my friends was crazy about it, but I didn't like it because it never ends. There is no other and no one wins it. And so that no one wins it, I thought that those who were playing these countries might be competing or betting on winning a real prize because they were so focused to the point that none of them took their eyes off the screen for 1 second and they were continuing in God, regardless of what was happening around them. And because I was so curious, I started looking at Andrew and telling him why they were playing like that, and when he laughed. "Scary," said they live. I told him what it means. They answered. He told me that they are at different levels, but they all follow one rule, and whoever dies in this game of Minecraft dies in fact too. And before I understood all his words, when one of the games started hitting himself on something rigid, simple, to look at, and I told him, "What is he doing?" He told me that he was trying to outdo himself so that he would not die in the game. And at that time, every time I looked at the shape of the game that they were playing, I would tell myself that this man was definitely mentally ill. And after a while, he confirmed my words and let my whole body feel the first time one of the games began to ease him. And he says, "Ah." He rolled around himself for the first time, and his eyes were red like blood. And he told him that he had not freckled his grocery for many days. And he looked rare and said to him, "Please allow me to start again. Please let me go back and do what I have done for the 3 days since I came back. Please give me another chance." But at that time, I noticed him walking towards him close to me. And he said to him, "There is only one rule here. And that is, if you die in the game, you will actually die." Was also about to do DD. And Anzar started laughing like crazy and pulled out a gun and shot the guy in the brain. Blood was everywhere, although blood drowned all the other players who were sitting next to the player who was the subject. No one in them made any reaction, and what happened was completely normal for them, to the point that no one among them turned around and looked at the game for a single second, and none of them said a single word in response to the crime. The brutal murder that happened before their eyes, and they continued to play as they were. And I was at the time because I was surprised and terrified of him. I shouted at them and I started yelling at them and told them, "You are crazy," and I began to declare more, and I started running as fast as I could to the outside until I left the room and the dirty corridor. And because I was running quickly, I found the tall bald man standing in front of me in the corridor. I kept him frozen and quickly ran out of the metal door and closed it with all my strength, and I don't know how. After that, I was able to get home. The next morning, when I went to the same place again to look at these people, I noticed that the guarded door was locked from the outside. Notably large. After witnessing the scene, I understood they had gone. Regardless of the man, I don't know who exactly he is, but I have no doubt that he is a crazy man and that he is playing the role of a character. Look at what he called himself. And he is always keeping the game in a terrifying battle. And from that time until today, I am not able to forget the terrifying appearance of the game. And they are sitting playing. I'm Mason. This story happened to me 4 years ago, when I was still 30 years old. At that time, very strange things were happening to me. When I started playing Minecraft a little while ago, I named one of the pigs in the game after people I knew. When I realized that this game is just a game, people play it to get revenge on each other, I decided to start playing it too, but in a different way. When I was living in my small apartment, my bedroom, it was in front of the bedroom of my neighbor, Mrs. Perry, who was 53 years old, and since the day I lived in her apartment, I had not seen anyone who was cruel to her. When I noticed that in the beginning she was living with her husband, who left her behind after that. And the reason was that she preferred Asia like this all along. I also thought that her husband might be a curse because he was not able to live with her in the same house, and one day I saw a very terrifying situation for her, which was that she was a white and beautiful cat. She stood at her window before the cat entered. So Perry walked on her quickly and grabbed her by the hand, and without giving her a chance, she ran away. I threw her on the floor from her room, which was in the second floor, and the cat at that time did not die, but her legs were badly injured, and I saw her walking, sweating from too much pen. And also at one time, when young children approached Mrs. Perry's house, she would come out and scream at them, because I hated her behavior one day. Afternoon time while the rain was on. After I finished, I ate. I started playing Minecraft like every day, and I opened my computer, and as soon as the device started to open, I heard Mrs. Perry's voice screaming at me and telling me, "You professor, are you like this? You are going to interrupt my sleep and come," even though the sound of the device, it wasn't really loud. But because I wanted to avoid her words, I responded to her and told her to close the window of your room and you will know how to sleep well. But when she began fighting with me, praising me with monstrous words and insulting me, her voice was very annoying. As for me, I died quickly from my place and without a response. The net slipped in her face. Although she was upset by what she had done, she smiled at me with a strange smile that made me feel the most upset, and I felt so frustrated that I slammed hard on the keyboard with my hands and directed all my anger towards the game I was playing and time quickly. And without thinking, why did I do that? She wrote her name on the toy and named it Miss Zombie, and because I was upset with her, I decided that I had to kill her in the game until I hit her on the head in the summer, and her anger decreased very much at that time. The next morning while I was sleeping, I suddenly woke up to the sound of the ambulance, and when I looked out the window at the street, I saw the ambulance taking Mrs. Perry on a bed, and she was unconscious and her head was dropping at that time. I thought it might be her head, so I stumbled over something. I passed out, and because of the blood it was mine. Her whole face and dress. She stayed in the hospital for 3 days, and after that she returned home with a ligature on her head. And at that moment I thought it might be just a normal incident, but that's why it happened. But when I wrote her name on the game for the first time, I was very afraid of this game, and I sat for a week without playing it at all. Mrs. Berry also noticed that the circuit was good and did not bother anyone because of her injury. But as soon as she began to improve, she returned to her normal nature again, and this appeared with a child named Noah while he was playing in the street with his dog, and when he threw the ball in his hand so high that it broke the rim of the net that was in its silver at that time, the child started running because he was afraid. But when Mrs. Perry came out of her house with the ball in her hand and said to him, "God Almighty, take it from me and do not be afraid." The child at that time, I thought that she might have changed and walked towards her, but when he arrived there, believing in football, something very strange happened. She leaned closer to him and held Dinah in a rigid hand. He began to ruin her without mercy. The child was crying in pain, and she was standing ha, laughing an evil laugh. When I finished, the child came running to his house crying, and I was upset with this poor child and came to him. I decided I had to take a step back. This time, the pig in the game was named after this crazy lady. She took the pig, tied it with a rope and threw it into a boiling bath. It began to burn and let out a very loud cry, and at the same moment that I was playing in it, a fire broke out in Mrs. Perry's house, and all the people gathered together, and they could see black smoke coming out of the house, and the fire also, and she was holding the whole house. And everyone was speaking in the form of her corpse, which was lying on the ground after she had died for a long time. On that day, I was not upset about what happened, especially because it was. But violently, this brute force began to affect me rigidly, apart, about what was happening. I reached a brutal stage, and even though I used to eat a lot of meat, I used to notice to myself that I was always hungry, and it didn't make any difference to me. What happened in the game actually came true, and it affected me or not, and it didn't make any difference to the names of the animals in the game that I was named with. It was the names of people I knew, and this game was pulling me like a magnet to the point. On the day of our birth, I was not sitting near the window and seeing children playing in the street. I concentrated with them rigidly, and when I heard their words, I knew that they were playing with each other and the oldest child among them. He bullies them constantly and takes advantage of his size and tears the girl with them on the ground. He is so serious that she fell on the hard ground and flopped on her knee, and one of the two children shouted at him and said to him, "You are hurting us like this while we are tired." At that time, I could not stop myself, and the first thing I knew was that his name was Peter. I decided that I should teach him a lesson, but this time because I wanted to see how this happened and to see if the game was really doing this. Nor is it just a coincidence. I started playing on my phone while I was close to the net, and at the same time my eyes were on the big boy, whom I named the creeping animal, and he kept flying in the shape of a cactus. After that, without knowing how this happened, as soon as this goal touched the group of cactus in front of him, in the game, the boy's appearance remained like a bird, and he began to collapse on the ground and scratch his entire body like a crab. And the other kids? They were standing screaming because of what they saw, and the boy was always trying to remove something from his body until his whole skin turned red and blood started coming out from everywhere in his body, from his nostrils, his eyes, his hands, every part of his body. And after 5 minutes, when the boy began to surrender to death slowly and quickly, I closed the window, and as soon as the boy died, I sat convincing myself that it was possible. Their parents also had the same disease, and their son inherited it. 10 of them. The game is not the reason. In my mind at that time, no one knew what I was doing at all, and on the second day, when I went to a party and met my old friend, and she continued to insult me in a monstrous way in front of my friends because I didn't like her. She also wrote her name on the game, called the spider her name, and destroyed it. In the summer, I started laughing and saying, "I wish I knew good news about you very soon," and at that time I didn't care at all. However, I don't care about anyone who bothers me, and I don't care about it. This game may or may not kill me in real life. All I had on my mind was that if this game was really going to destroy me, then everyone must be destroyed with me.